Well, as I said, welcome to the meeting, the February meeting, the full February meeting of Mumbles Community Council. Thank you all for attending today. We've got quite a full agenda, but I would be quite keen to crack on with this. So if I go straight into item 1, which is apologies for absence. Steve?
Yeah, we've had apologies from Councillor Timble, Councillor Richard Jarvis and Councillor Philip Reason.
Councillor Richard Jarvis is here now.
Yeah, the slight change, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that, Richard, and condolences. Okay, so Pip Reason as well. So, okay, so those apologies are noted. Okay, thank you. So then if we...
Sorry to jump in, Martin. It just popped up on the corner of my screen that Linda Tyler-Lloyd has sent her apologies.
Okay.
I don't know where it went to, but it just came up on the screen.
Okay, so I make the clerk aware of that, whether it's official or not, but we have had apologies from Linda Tyler-Lloyd. So then if I go on to point 2, as declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest anybody would like to raise at this point? Now, if that's the case, then if we go on to point 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of January 2022. Any points in relation to those minutes in the first instance? We all happy to accept those? Can I have a forwarder? Sarah, and a seconder, Rob, thank you. And then the special meeting held on the 25th of January 2022. Ian, have you got a point in place?
Obviously this meeting was the press and public were excluded in the budget. So I was looking at the budget figures. Are we in line to talk about this at the moment, or is it still confidential?
In relation to what, Ian?
I'll be specific.
Yes.
At the meeting, it shows with the minutes the breakdown of the costings for the skate park.
Yes.
And they're in excess of £570,000 now. But my question is, we've got 434,700 for the skate park. What's this skate park capital cost, an additional 123,500?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, I was going to say, Paul, I would prefer, but Paul's not here this evening.
No, well, I can give him a call and ask him to come if you want.
Well, if you're happy to answer this, I'll defer to you, Steve.
Yeah, well, if you recall, it's obviously you voted to allocate the money at your special meeting in a certain way. What Paul is doing, he's put it under that heading. It's basically that money is in respect of what the skate park took away from the all-weather pitch. So that money's been collected over 2 years. So though it's not, it's put down as skate park, it's not additional skate park. That's the money that will go to the skate park, which will free that sum to go back to the all-weather pitch. In the second year, is that correct? Yeah, so well, so there'll be 2 amounts. One this year, one next financial year, and then the same payment the following financial year, which will then make the full amount that the skate park borrowed, if you like, via the cross. Borrowed from the all-weather pitch. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I also note there's a running cost of 6,000 and the sinking fund of 7,900. Obviously, I think it's been decided not to include the water fillers, the bottle fillers.
That's correct.
Because that was a considerable sum. Are there any other costs that are going to be going into the skate park project?
Not to my knowledge. Steve, would you like to come in on that?
Well, one of the things I was going to say in in a couple of weeks' time, it's very likely there'll be a special meeting to discuss the skate park, and you'll probably be presented with new costs because of the delays that have unfortunately have occurred. So I suggest we wait till then and probably have a look at it.
Well, I've mentioned this in previous meetings, Clark, about the costs going up all the time. It's no surprise, you know, anyone that thought they wouldn't go up was going along around and just not taking heed of things. You know, as far as the Underhill project is concerned, that went up by over £300,000. You know, people need to be aware of this fact, and this matter of this so-called paying back £123,500 into the Underhill project. I hope that will still stand, because I wouldn't want to see that compromised.
Yeah. Again, I very much take on board your point, Ian, and it's a very valid point. But as we have seen exactly with the Underhill project, and it is a real shame as well, the longer the delay that we have, unfortunately, particularly in the current financial situation, the longer the delay that we have, the longer the costs, the more the costs will go up. And that's an unfortunate fact of life. I think we all know that, and we all appreciate that as well.
Well, maybe there's an answer to be said that, you know, we should all be tightening our belts a little bit and, you know, taking account of this fact. But anyway, you've answered the question. So it's just that it was on the in the agenda pack.
Yeah. Okay. So, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Rebecca Fogarty.
Thanks. I just wanted to make a clarification, which is that at the special meeting, press and public were excluded for the items relating to personnel only. So for the benefit particularly of members of the public who are interested in the goings on of the council, the discussion about budget, as far as I remember, was in fully open session.
Yes, and just to clarify on that, and I will hold my hand up a little bit with this one, is when it came to the recording of the budget meeting, it was recorded onto my computer, and I've had a bit of technical problem transferring it over to the clerk to put it up on our website. But I think that was attended to today, Steve, is it not?
I haven't checked that the transfers worked, but you certainly sent it over, haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because it's just that they were such large files. Okay. Okay, is that a legacy hand, Ian, or can we go on to the next point? Okay, then, so if we go then straight on then to item number 16, the Mumbles Festival, and the proposal here is to using funds from CTC1 Mumbles Fest, recommended the Mumbles Festival be held over the weekend of the 16th and 19th of September 2022. The powers be dissolved to the Culture, Tourism and Communications Committee to organise the event. Rob, can I pass this over to you to present to the council?
Thanks, Mart. Just a slight amendment to that proposal. We haven't definitely decided on that weekend yet. What we've said after talking to Pip and Claire last week about it is that it would be either one of the weekends in September or the first week of October, and that's yet to be decided depending on availability of different things. But apart from that, it stands as it is.
Okay, Will, I can see you got a hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sure I know the answer to this question, but just to clarify, so even though the powers of for finance are being dissolved to the committee, all spending will still go through the clerk or RFO.
Absolutely.
And only the amount budgeted for in the general budget will be obviously spent, yeah?
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, Pam?
Oh, we always have Mumbles Fest as the kick-off to all of the summer activities. Why is it going to late September, October? I just don't understand.
Because with the Queen's Jubilee, Paul Whitaker has his event on in June, And we thought, as it worked so well last year in September, we would look at doing something in the autumn and spreading the events around throughout the year. And now we've lost the food festival. It seemed like to make more sense to do that in September, October.
Okay, Rebecca Fogarty. I'll go work my way across the top lines. There's a number of people want questions.
Thanks,
Rebecca
Martin.
Fogarty.
I do have some reservations, Rob, about moving it to September, especially because we've had long conversations in council about how we're supporting staff well-being, and having a big event, the event the Mumbles Community Council does in September, requires a lot from our staff over the summer holidays, and I just feel that we are sort of setting ourselves up to just basically repeat all of those issues that we had this year, because it was a massive effort from our staff this year to get it in shape for September.
It was, but I mean, I've spoken to Claire about this, and she's happy for this to go ahead then, and hopefully by then we'll have our assistant in as well. You know, a lot of the things are already in place. You know, we've got all the contacts. We don't have to source things like we have had to do in the past. So, you know, this is with the blessing of our events manager. And as I say, you know, it's better to do it at a time where locals aren't on holiday like they are through the summer, and also better to do it not the same sort of time as Paul Whitaker's doing his Jubilee thing, because otherwise, you know, it's just too much too soon, isn't it? Too much in one go.
Do you mind if I just come back, Martin? Just
Yeah,
because
certainly.
I think the Mumbles Fest is such a, you're a victim of your own success, Rob, in the sense it's become such a flagship event. It's more than just Claire, isn't it? It's actually the whole staff team, and the feedback certainly that I had from various people was that it was really, really not helpful to have it being the majority of the planning over the holidays. So I just feel that, I know you're saying it's with the blessing of Claire, I just want to challenge that a little bit.
Well, no, because I've spoken to Claire about it, as has Pip, and you know, like I say, most of the groundwork is done, and the sooner we can confirm a date and get on with it, the more work we can do now and get it sorted even before the summer.
Okay, if we can go on to Sarah Keaton.
Sorry. Yeah, there's a few things. One thing, the weather. We can't be as we go into autumn, we can't be so sure of the weather, and that could be an absolute downer. The second thing is, I do feel for Claire, because the summer holidays, when you've got kids, having to work flat out is not a good look. And I'm aware of how we've really let the ball drop with our care for our staff. It would be good if we could give her a break and just do it in the summer, so she gets to be able to go, that's over with, and have a break. The other thing is, talking about the Jubilee, I think it would be a massive anticlimax, because everyone will be, oh, Jubilee. Can't we make it sort of as a follow on to the Jubilee, and work with Paul Whitaker on this and sort of just flow it on? And that also, I was thinking it could link in with the schools, because the schools might want to do something with that as well. So rather than work against it and just completely push it to one side, why don't we flow with the schools and Paul on this and all work together?
Okay.
And on top of that, Claire gets a holiday as well. Hurrah.
Well, coming back to that, I think what you need to do is just trust us on this. I mean, we did our very first White Lady Festival in July, and it was a washout. The rain, you know, was awful. We did Mumbles Fest last year in September, and we had possibly one of the best days we could have had. You can never judge the weather, and you're as likely to get good weather in September as you are in June, July, or August. I think what you need to do is just trust our judgment on this. Paul has booked the castle grounds for the 3 days lining up for that. This is separate from what Paul's doing. And I think you just need to trust us. What should be quite a simple sort of, let's just agree to let us get on with it, is now turning into, let's look for problems. Let us deal with the problems because we know what we're doing. We've done 2 of them very successfully. Okay, Carrie's next, I think.
Okay, Carrie, yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree. We need to have this in the summer. The Jubilee is the very first weekend in June. That leaves another 6 or 7 weeks of school time before people go off on holiday. You've got a much higher chance of good weather. You've got longer evenings and you've got warmer evenings. Even if the weather's good in September, the evenings are cold. You know, and we need to have this in the summer. I agree with what Sarah said. You know, first weekend in June is the Jubilee. You know, let's make it a summer of just having great events. You know, and a couple of weeks later we have Mumbles Fest, and then a couple of weeks after that will be the air show. Be fantastic. It's a way better time. September's just not appropriate.
Okay.
Sorry, I beg to differ and disagree, but actually we proved it last year. It is exactly the right time to have it. As I'd already said, you know, in June, people are revising for exams. The local kids are revising for exams. They haven't got the time to go to it. Once the school holidays start, people go on holiday. So we're losing a load of our locals already. You know, the idea of putting it in September is because all our locals are back then, because people are going away on holiday. Martin, can we just have Rich and then put it to the vote, please? Because I don't want people coming back and back. I've got a meeting to get to. I'm very sorry.
Okay, I'll put it to Richard now then. Okay, Richard.
Okay. On weather, I hear what people are saying, because traditionally you should have a bit more rain in September than you do in June, July. However, in time I spent, I found September one of the better months, and we've had washouts in August and everything else. And I agree, it'd be good to have a separate thing to the Jubilee. Jubilee would be a great thing. Then something smaller in September. So I think it's good to separate them. We'll have more events in Mumbles, and I think after 2 years of lockdown, the people in Mumbles deserve that.
Yeah.
And one thing, Martin, just to come back on, the bonus of having it slightly darker in September is that when you have your headline bands on, it is much more of a spectacle to see them all lit up than to have, you know, twilight or still sunlight. It's not that cold in September at all. Nobody whinged about it last year. Everybody was really happy. It worked really well. And I think we should just be allowed to get on with it. And people who are not on the festival committee or the culture committee to sort of just trust us on this and not look for problems when we know what we're doing perfectly well. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else want to come in on this before I sort of put it to the vote?
Sorry, can I just clarify?
No, you've already spoken.
Oh, hold on, Rob, calm down.
Yeah, I'm just clarifying.
Yeah,
are we
she's got a point.
Just on the date?
Well, we're voting not on the actual date.
No, can I? Right, can we calm down a bit here, right? The recommendation, as I understand it from Rob's amendment to the recommendation, are you giving a specific date, Rob?
No.
Why not?
Because when we had spoken to Claire and Pip last week, we said rather than just decide on a date now, let's see on availability of things first. Because
there's
no
always
point in
bands that are available, Rob.
Excuse me, Sarah. It's not just bands. It's ground hire. It's people to do the bar. It's people to do food. We need to find you don't book things before you know that you've got things to book. So please just leave it to us. Trust us on this because we know what we're doing. What we're asking for is it's either going to be in September or the very first week of October. That's all we're asking.
That's ridiculously late.
It's not ridiculously late.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah,
sorry,
please,
Chair.
Yeah,
sorry,
just
Chair.
don't use terms like that. Okay, so that is the proposal that's coming. Can I just ask a question? Because the one
Yeah.
concern that I think I've got in relation to this is how this relates to the feedback to the rest of the council. So what you're saying that this ultimately will be arranged by the Culture, Tourism and Communication Committee, not by the subcommittee.
It'll be arranged by the subcommittee, the festival committee.
But the culture, because this is a pragmatic concern here in relation to when it comes to an audit trail, when it comes to the money being accounted for.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah.
The money will be done through the culture and tourism. Well, the culture committee is no tourism.
So all decisions on budget will be made at that committee level.
No, I think that will be made by the subcommittee like we did last year.
Steve, I don't think that's kosher. You know, this is nothing personal, Rob. This is just, I don't think, are we allowed to do that, Steve?
I think you have to delegate to a committee. I think you can't really delegate to a working group. So
it's a festival subcommittee, though, isn't it? Just like you know, the Digital Archive has powers to spend its money, delegated powers. That's a working group as much as the festival committee is.
I think we'd have to get advice on this. Rebecca Fogarty.
Just a point of information, Chair. I don't think we do have powers. I think we've given a contract out, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. I'm just got, you know, ultimately, bottom line is we as a council have got responsibility to manage our audit trail and issues like that, and that's just an issue. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, Martin, just to the point is the committee, it's attended by an officer, minutes are taken, so there's a record of the decisions, key decisions made.
Yes.
I
Okay,
think that's the important.
So I'd be happy with that. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Rebecca Fogarty.
Yeah, I would just, the example of the Digital Archive is actually really opposite here, because what works really well with that is that the subgroup have artistic control, if you like, of how it is developed. And those of us that are not gifted in that space kind of allow that project to unroll. But we do get regular reports of proposed expenditure. So, and that comes to full council, which I personally would really like that, because it means that we're kept up to speed of how the project is developing. And yeah, I think that would be really good for Mumbles Fest as well, because I'm always aware that I kind of put the date in my diary and I don't know how it's going along the way. So I'd really welcome that that approach.
Okay, isn't it just another level of bureaucracy that's going to slow down the actual making this event actually happen?
Well,
I don't think so, Rob.
Yeah, it could be argued that may could well be the case, but ultimately we've got to be answerable to our governance structures going forward, and that's why I would have some misgivings about a working group making those decisions. There has to be this governance structure and audit trail. That is our duty as a council, to ensure that we always got those in place at its most fundamental level. Carrie?
Yeah, just as I absolutely agree, Martin, and I think that full council needs to have a monthly report with a breakdown of all the expenditure, all the planned expenditure, because 23,000 is quite a big chunk of money, and we really need to be absolutely clear on what it's being spent on, because to be honest, I haven't the faintest idea how it was spent last year. We never got a single report or breakdown of the expenditure, and I think we need to know that. We need to know if we're challenged by people, we need to be able to show that this has gone through due process and is absolutely clear and people know exactly what the money's being spent on.
Okay, Adam.
What's the advantage of the subcommittee making the financial decision?
Well, I think Rob is arguing that it's a less level of bureaucracy. But, you know,
This means we get things done quicker. And we're planning, we want to be efficient with our time rather than, you know, having constraints put on us by people who don't even come to the festival.
Good. Yeah. Okay. So shall we just put it to? Sorry, I thought there was somebody coming in. Sorry.
Yeah.
Shall we
Can we
just
go
put,
to the vote because I've got to go?
Yeah. Yeah. Shall we just put it to the vote then? But so the vote is that the Mumbles Festival will be held over a weekend at the end of September or the beginning of October, and that
at some point in September. Sorry, Martin. One weekend in September or the 1st of October.
And that it will be devolved to the culture.
What?
And it will be devolved to the Culture, Tourism and Communication Committee, not subcommittee. I just wanted to clarify that. So all those in favour of that proposal, can you please show your hands? Okay. All those against? Okay. So that isn't passed. I'm sorry.
Attention from me.
Pardon?
So is it past? What about the actual data Mumbles Fest? What's happening with that?
Well, this is what I'm saying,
not
because
passed?
the proposal itself hasn't passed. So
Right.
Yes, so we will have to go back and revisit this to come up with a different proposal that will be more acceptable to council.
Well, can we at least propose that we're allowed to decide on a date with the committee? This is ridiculous. I mean,
but ultimately things have got to come back to the full council, haven't they? You know, ultimately the bottom line is the full council of the decision-making body. We've got subcommittees. Subcommittees make recommendations to council, but if council do not pass that, we cannot change the mind of council. That is how democracy works. Steve,
it will be amended so we could at least. Can it be amended? We can at least decide that we're allowed to choose our date and get on with planning for it.
Sorry, Jake. Can I ask?
Got a license to fill in.
Exactly, I know that, Rob. Steve?
Yeah, you've already made your decision, so you can't revisit this again tonight. But
No.
it might be helpful to Rob to know there's very likely to be a special meeting in 2 weeks' time where he could bring a new motion. Perhaps he would know when the subcommittee decided when they actually want to hold it in 2 weeks' time, and you can revisit it. Visit it then.
I'm just disgusted, to be honest. I'm just disgusted, to be honest, that some people are so negative and are so, you know, they don't have anything to do with Mumbles Fest, and now they're trying to dictate about when it actually happens and stuff. I think it's absolutely appalling that it just goes to show how useless working this council can be on times and how it doesn't pull together. I'm going to my meeting. I'm sorry. Good night.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Rob. Okay, so if we go back to the agenda that we have in front of us, so if we could go back to the clerk's report.
Chair, sorry, is it worth doing the adjourning the meeting now for the questions rather than keep people waiting?
Okay, that's fair enough. We can do that if you suggest that, I suppose, to save people hanging about. So if we go then, so I've got to put it to the proposal that we suspend standing orders now to
adjourn the meeting, Chair.
Adjourn the meeting, sorry, get my terms right. That we adjourn the meeting so that we can accept questions from the floor. Are we all in favour of that, or anybody objecting to that? No, everybody okay with that? Okay. I would just want to particularly highlight one question that we've had sent in, and I will read, and I'll give 15 minutes to this section, okay? Because we can't give too much to this section because we've got a lot of other businesses to get through. But I particularly wanted to refer to a question that we've had sent in from Grant Parry. And I'll read the question in the first instance so that councillors are aware. I live in Mumbles, and similar to other coastal towns in the UK, there is an increase in second homes or holiday homes. Legislation is far behind rules of change of use, but does Mumbles plan to tackle this? The issue with holiday lets are as follows. They directly impact local businesses in the coldest season as Mumbles becomes a ghost town. People then do not spend money in these months to support local businesses. They are causing local businesses the inability to buy or even long-term rent properties in a place they call home. They are causing high rent and poor living conditions or inflated sales price. I understand that there is a benefit with more money in Mumbles, but there are people who are affected negatively by this. They create an increased fire risk, and legislation needs to tackle this. The typical process of making a home into a holiday rental property, a no-sign hotel, is that the homeowner needs to submit a change of use. Now, with the COVID and the boom in Airbnb and others, people are skipping this, not informing the council or building regs, or even telling their neighbours. I have experience in this as I live between two. One has gone through the correct channels, the other has not. And with Grenfell and Wales passing the rule for fire suppression devices to be fitted in these types of properties back in 2016, can the council look at this simply to consider neighbours' safety in the first instance? I'd like to say I particularly welcome this question, as this is something which is close to my heart, to be honest, because I really think that this is an issue. I have talked about this in the past, and you can look at cases what have gone on in other cities and countries around the world, like Berlin and Barcelona, for instance, where the local authorities there have taken action. Now, of course, Mumbles is no Berlin or Barcelona, but we are a key holiday and tourist destination. And I do have worries or concerns about some of these issues, particularly in relation to rented property becoming more Airbnb and holiday property, and not giving the ability of people who are on maybe more limited incomes to live in this area. Now, in relation to answering Grant's question, and I will open it up for other councillors in a bit, but as you may or may not be aware, is that Swansea City Council did raise the council tax for these holiday homes to 100% more. But in the great order of things, I personally don't think that is a big barrier to stopping people using those, because in how much they're making off these properties per year, just in the increase in the value of the properties, that probably offsets that quite a lot, not to mention how much they might get from the rental of these properties. But at the same time, all these additional properties, but it's a difficult one as well, because we are a holiday destination. It is a key business, it's a key industry of this area. So managing it, I think, is quite key. Unfortunately, as Mumbles Community Council, I don't think that we've got really a lot of powers in this area. But at the same time, I want to reassure Grant that, I personally, and I know a lot of other councillors, and we as a community council, are very aware of this issue and very sensitive to this issue. And I myself, for instance, have attended a couple of meetings with the residents who are particularly concerned about the development that's being proposed for the Oyster Lounge, which is being made into a multi-occupancy sort of area. So all I would sort of say, particularly before I open it up to other councillors, is yes, we are aware of these things. I particularly welcome the point that you raised about the safety regulations, the fire regulations, and about how people are putting things over to maybe holiday lets, Airbnb, unofficially. And of course, that's a very difficult thing to keep a tab on. But as I said, more than anything, yes, we are sensitive. We will bear all this in mind. But we have got limited powers as a community council, but we can make representations to the city and county, and we will do. But I very much welcome your question, and I welcome the fact that you have raised this topic. If I could hand over to Will now.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, thanks for the question. I couldn't agree more. I think it's a big issue that Mumbles needs to tackle. We're not alone in this problem. I think, unfortunately, for some places in Cornwall, it's a bit late for them. And I think we've still got a bit of time, luckily, to try and deal with this problem, because I've been to some places in Cornwall in the winter and the lights aren't even on, and 80% of the properties, and it's not good for the communities. And then obviously you get that knock-on effect with the schools and the local jobs, and everything starts to snowball at a certain point. So really big problem. I've made representations on it myself. I've spoken to the cabinet member about it before in the past. I've also spoken to the head of planning, who said they are looking into it, and they were monitoring somewhere, I believe it's Westminster, which were trialing planning permission for second homes and Airbnbs. Is like a one-off in the UK. I've got the email somewhere, but I can't remember exactly what he said. I'd be happy to pass it on if Grant wants to get in touch with me. The other point is, obviously Welsh Government do have a review out on this, and they are doing a lot to try and tackle this second homes problem. But I think what everyone needs to, a lot of people aren't maybe aware, and the difference between sort of second homes and holiday lets, because although the council put up the council tax for second homes, if those properties are rented out, they can be classed as a business. And as long as I understand, don't quote me on these figures, but if it's rented out, in fact, I won't mention any figures. If it's rented out over a certain amount of weeks a year, then it can be classed as a business, and they pay corporation tax, and they don't pay any council tax at all. So a lot of these, as far as I understand it, so a lot of the second homes, which are utilized, they come down a couple of weeks a year, and they rent it for the rest of the time. The council's actually, as far as I understand it, not benefiting at all from that in many cases. So that also needs to be tackled, and I'm sure there's far cleverer people than me dealing with this, and I'm sure that'll be something that comes out of the Welsh Government review, which is due before the summer, I believe. So I think there is things Mumbles Community Council can do. I mean, we could obviously get in touch. I've tried to feed into the review myself, but I think the council could feed into that Welsh Government review in some capacity. So I think that's something we could maybe take forward from this, and maybe have a working group that I think it's probably Julie James maybe, or
good point.
That we could feed into that and see if we can have some representation and pass our comments on. But a big problem that we all need to do as much as we can. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. Sarah?
We were out canvassing the other day in Mumbles, and there was a lady, slightly older, elderly. I'm careful what I say these days because I'm getting there as well. And she was quite distraught because she hasn't got neighbours because of this problem. She's living isolated because the houses either side were Airbnbs or whatever. It is a problem. It's a problem in the schools. You can't be a governor in the schools these days without noticing the numbers are going down, because everybody wants to retire here, or they want their holiday homes here or their Airbnbs here. And of course that means that businesses get run down, schools definitely get run down, local shops and neighbourhoods. It's sad because the very thing that attracts them to our community is the very thing that's dying because they're coming to the community. Yeah, we've really got to get to grips with this some way or other and feedback, because otherwise Mumbles, as Mumbles is going to change radically again in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah, I agree. Can rip the soul out of the community. Rebecca Fogarty.
Thanks, Martin. And thank you, Grant, for the question and for writing it in advance. Yeah, totally agree with previous two comments that this is a massive problem that has complex solutions, I would say. And I don't think Mumbles Community Council holds all the levers. I would say, let's give credit where it's due. You mentioned the 100% council tax increase. I mean, one of our number was instrumental in making that Swansea Council policy, weren't you, Councillor Gilbert?
Yeah.
So we have roles to play as community councillors in in policy ideas that could make a big difference to our local area and indeed across Swansea. Would welcome the opportunity to engage with the Welsh Government review on this topic. I'm particularly concerned about it from a social cohesion point of view. There are so many factors that are increasing the risk of people being isolated at the moment that we don't need this to be an additional one, and yet it is one that we're faced with. So yeah, would definitely support MCC trying to raise its voice even further on this issue.
Okay, Ian Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, this is a topic that we've looked at for some time when we were having planning meetings. We'd look at the application, and you had an idea that the house was being converted in such a way, especially if you took cognizance of what the neighbours were saying and the existing provision that's actually there with a property. Now, one of the issues, of course, is the impact that one has on the on-road parking. If you're required to have at least 2 car spaces with a property, but once it's converted, you can end up having 3 families turning up with 3, if not 5 cars to use that property as an Airbnb. And it does impact on the community. There's no question of that. With regards to the 100%, the community charge that City applied on second homes, well, that's a different matter. I have had people that have had second homes within the ward and thoroughly enjoyed them and enjoyed coming here, but they then found themselves in a situation that they felt that they were being penalised, and they've decided to sort of up sticks, sell the property and go somewhere else where that charge isn't applied. So it's not all gain, but planning is something that could sort these things out, but there's not a great deal of appetite for planning matters on community council. I don't know what City's views are on this sort of Airbnb. I would have thought if they realised, as Councillor Thomas has said, they're missing out on some form of additional revenue, they might be able to do something about that, and that might be helpful for some people. But there's only so much housing stock at the end of the day, and it's market forces that determine what it will be used for. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ian. Richard.
Yeah, thank you. On that, first of all, on the increase in council tax, I know one person has got an Airbnb around the corner and another family friend who's got a second home. What has happened is they said, well, we've got to rent it out more. Fine, you get more people renting it out to pay that tax. Now, one change I'd like to see in that is if you change in a business, you don't pay council tax, you just pay corporation tax. We need perhaps a change in legislation there. I know the Welsh Government are looking at all these things. All new developments, yeah. Wherever possible, we should do all we can to say it's got to have sufficient parking. Because we all know with planning laws, there's so many ways around things, which is a problem. I know someone was reading recently, there's one village in West Wales, and they've got just one full-time resident who's 80 years old, and the place is basically dead in the winter. Yes, we want to avoid that. Now, as people have said, it is a big issue, and there's all sorts of issues involved. And it's, I dare say, we've got to do things gradually and try different things, because nobody's got the answer at the moment. But I think the Welsh Government's doing the right thing. Let's look at it, see what we can do, because it's a problem on all coastal communities these days. That's basically all I've got to say at the moment.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for that, and thank you for the discussion, and thank Grant for his question, to be honest. So, could we minute, Steve, or I don't know if we can minute because this is the meeting has been suspended, but could we, or could I resolve that I will endeavour to look into this and look at what the situation is and review the situation and see what role we possibly can play. As I said, I do think this is a complex issue. Looking at, I have read up on this, to be honest, and different places have adopted different policy approaches to trying to resolve these issues, none of which seem to have been completely utterly faultless. So would that be possible, Steve?
Yeah, as you say, it wouldn't be recorded on the minutes as such, as an action, but yeah, it's a public forum. You've just made that pledge, so it will be, noted.
And people can hold me to it. Okay, so before we resume the meeting, any other issues? Michael Eames, can I bring you in? Can we bring Michael Eames in? Michael Eames, you're on mute. Can you hear us? Can you unmute
Sorry,
him?
Sorry, can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Michael.
Can you just clarify again what the skate park costs are at the moment? Yeah, a figure of 570,000 was mentioned. Is that the correct figure now?
Steve, can I defer to you on that? But I would like, obviously, the RFO on that.
Well, I just said earlier, the figures are a moot point now because they're going to be very different, and we will know that in 2 weeks' time. So,
so can I ask where the 570,000 came from then, that figure?
I have no idea. You have to ask Councillor Scott. It's not one I recognise.
Oh.
Councillor Scott, did you want to come in on this? But this is, it's not really, this isn't the sort of conversation I think this sort of session is for, really. These sort of figures are available publicly. Ian, did you want to come back on that?
Well, I don't have, as to whether I'm qualified to come back is one thing, but I asked a pertinent question. And according to the figures that have been presented with the minutes from the meeting on the 25th of January, the skate park was standing at £434,700. There was a running cost of £6,000, a sinking fund of £7,900, and there was a skate park capital cost of £123,500, and that gives a figure in excess of £572,000. That's not counting the water bottle fillers,
but the water
other matters. But the clerk did explain that this additional capital cost of 123,500 has been taken from the Underhill 3G pitch business, I believe, which wasn't going to be used. and it's gone into the skate park, and it was going to be paid back, I gather, over a 2-year period. Now, I'm sure somebody would clarify that more, but I did say at the end of my introduction to the topic, actually, was, when are the public going to be made aware of the skate park costings? The clerk did say there was going to be a meeting possibly within the next 2 weeks. And I think that's long overdue, actually, because, the costs for the skate park will increase exponentially. There's no doubt about that, not only on the building costs, but the other ancillary features that have been going on gradually, because it was something that started out with great enthusiasm at £100,000, and we're now singing and dancing to a tune of over £500,000. So you're shaking your heads, but sorry, I'm just saying it as it is. I'm not out to prove anything here. The budget figures normally would be released in a newsletter, and the newsletter didn't accommodate any budget proposed figures. I don't know if the council are intending to produce a newsletter with the proposed budget figures. The council have to be applauded, I would say, on the fact that they've managed to hold the precept to what it was last year, and that's a great thing. And I think, in fairness, I think council were united on that front, because we're talking about heat or eat, and we're talking about all sorts of things in the media these days, and we have to be aware of it. Just because we live in a nice area, maybe with lots of Airbnbs, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone here has a good income to sustain themselves. So we need to be aware of that. But I hope that helps you, Mr. Eames.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ian.
Yeah.
Okay, I will bring.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I was just asking that question as it was mentioned. I got two other quick questions. They are really quick. When a Zoom meeting is going to be made available? I know I've written to you and the clerk about this. They're still not available on the website. It's been since November, the first time I wrote about it. They're still not available. Have we got a date when these will be viewable for the residents?
Steve, would you like to respond on that? I think you have responded to Mr. Eames already, though.
Yeah, again, apologies. Martin, I think you referred to the problem we had with the last one.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, from what the consultants say, by the end of the week, they should be all up to date in terms of the recordings.
Thank you, Steve. And the last one, which is very quick as well, which will probably take longer, the seawall refurbishment. I've not seen very many conversations about that through the council, through Mumbles Community Council. It will have a great effect on jobs, parking, green spaces, road changes, traffic calming, cycling, pedestrians, business, water sports, all sorts of things it will affect. I haven't seen, and maybe you've had meetings on this, and I know you probably think you can't affect it, but I think the council should discuss it and have a view and put forward ideas of how this could be progressed in the best interest of the residents of Mumbles.
Well, just to come back on that last point, Mr. Eames, we have had a number of meetings with the consultants involved, and we've had various meetings going forward. We've also publicised widely on our social media platforms and on our website the consultation, because we think it's very important that local residents get their voices heard on that. I personally have met with a number of local businesses in the locality, talked to them about these, about the implications of the seafront development, and help them and encourage them to feed back into the overall consultation. But ultimately, and again, I know I've had this conversation with you before in emails, this is a consultation that city and county are doing and the consultants are doing. It is not our place to do their consultation for them or to confuse or muddy the water by doing an additional consultation. Yes, we have at our meetings, but we are consultees in the same way as members of the community are and local businesses are.
With all due respect, you sort of, the council does sort of lead the people really and should echo their views on what they're told on day-to-day basis, not necessarily through consultation. I mean, if we're willing to discuss holiday homes, which is a very, something way out of your league that you probably can't affect anyway. I mean, I'm sure something so local as a seawall which will affect people, should be discussed further. And I'm sorry if I've missed it, but I've not seen any comments from Mumbles Community Council regarding the seawall. I will check back and find out.
Okay, Rebecca Fogarty.
Thanks. Yeah, just to confirm, it's been discussed at Community and Social Development Committee, and MCC did put together a small sort of rapid response task and finish group to submit our own consultation response on that. We recognise that the implications of the development are wide ranging. So myself and Sarah as chair of environmental and Rob Marshall as chair of co-chair rather Culture and Tourism Committee have been putting our heads together on and making sure that we're covering sorry darling making sure that we're covering the full breadth of the issues really, and the clerk is facilitating contact with the relevant people and Swansea Council and the contractor. So it's very much live, just to reassure Mr. Eames.
Okay, thank you for that. Pam.
Thank you. Coming back to the Mr. Eames's question about the funding for the skate park, I really wish there was some way that we could express our exasperation with the way that the skate park funding is having to be reviewed all of the time. We've had an independent report which stopped us for 4 or 5 months. We've had the judicial review, and every time these things stop us dead in the water, we've got to go back to square one and try and cope with what Maverick are coping with, what everybody in the building industry is coping with, and try and put our heads together to take this forward again. So yes, we are finding it exasperating, and I wish there was some way that Mr. Eames, there was some